Out of interest, let me briefly write a story about the collapse, which includes events from 3 different time periods of the collapse. Pre-civilization, Yaeyamura, the Holy See, and Saint Freya, among others. Chapter 1. The Era of Collapse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. August 19th. Sunny. It has been a long time since the 5th collapse broke out, but I heard that the affected area has not recovered yet. The people over there are really pitiful. I don't know when the 6th collapse will break out. I hope it won't affect this area. Perhaps for everyone living in this era, if there were no collapses, then every day would be a good day. In summary, today is another day of peace. Note: I am not a serious person, but I am not very good at writing diaries, so some people who like to sneak a peek at diaries can enjoy it, although there is not much to look at. Putting down the pen and closing the diary, the figure in front of the table stretched lazily. On days without collapse, even serious people will get up early in the morning to write a diary. It's time for work. Flatten the short black hair mixed with a few strands of pink, leaving only one pink and one black hair standing on top of the head. There's no way, I can't keep it down. I seem to have gotten used to it, pushing open the door of the room and taking a beautiful breath in the cool morning breeze. August 19th is such a wonderful day. Before 4 a.m., a young man named Lee ignored his sleeping neighbors and completely let go of his voice, expressing his love for the still peaceful new day. It's so noisy. What's the ghost's name in the morning? Indeed, not being a human behavior can lead to dissatisfaction from others. Lee followed the sound and saw a round object smashing towards her. However, the attacker was not as hard as a stone, and instead scattered into pieces after hitting him. Licked the strange juice remaining on the edge of his mouth. It's cabbage. Lee showed a confident smile, but immediately collapsed. Why are you eating cabbage again today? Upon hearing Lee's complaint, a masked man carrying a wooden box filled with cabbage walked over, his robust figure seeming to be able to punch 10 thinly down. Tisk, it's good to have food to eat. What are you complaining about? The masked man slammed the box onto the ground with a loud bang, disdainful. You can choose to go hungry or go out quickly to find some other food. Meat is your responsibility. Don't say that, Qianjie. Lee broke a piece of cabbage leaf and chewed it in his mouth. His face furrowed up, but he still managed to swallow it. I just got up and haven't had a chance to start yet. I'm not as energetic as you, I only sleep 3 hours a day. Really? I think you have a lot of energy and go crazy every day, but many people have complained to Aponia about you. The masked man named Qianjie sneered and mocked. Ha, like a rooster. Isn't it right for them to thank me for saying that? After listening to Qianjie's words, Lee touched her chin and pondered seriously. Isn't it a blessing for those who don't buy an alarm clock to be able to provide timely wake-up services every day? Lee could feel that Qianjie had countless flaws and wanted to vomit, but she still swallowed them hard for her own image. Okay, since I already have the vegetables, then it's my working time now. Lee felt that if he couldn't speak of his own 1,000 tribulations, he might at any time take action against him without showing his martial arts skills. This kind of thing had happened before, and he immediately decided to sneak away as a gesture of respect for his strong desire for survival. Wait, I will definitely bring back a lot of meat tonight. Let's start a small stove then. Lee walked back and away from Qianjie, cautiously reaching the full value. The place where Lee lives is a church, located on Twilight Street. Although it is dilapidated, it can at least be inhabited. However, rather than being a church, this place is more like a welfare home. After all, the owners here started adopting homeless children after the 4th collapse, and they were all children who had contracted the disease. Qianjie is also one of them, although he was only adopted back after the outbreak of the 5th collapse. According to Aponia, when he found Qianjie, he seemed to have been severely injured. However, strangely enough, most of the injuries Qianjie suffered at that time were frostbite, just like people who had just come from the North and South Poles. Originally, that kind of injury was definitely fatal for an ordinary person, but fortunately, Qianjie has an alien-like physique, and after a period of recuperation, the injuries on his body have improved greatly. Although it's difficult to understand, it's okay for people to be okay. After being persuaded by Aponia, Qianjie naturally stayed behind. Due to the slightly older age of the adopted child, Aponia did not allow him to eat and drink for free. Instead, he hired Qianjie as a porter, allowing him to earn living expenses through his own labor. Since then, Qianjie has become the third staff member belonging to the church. As for why is it the third one? The first one is Aponia, who is not only a staff member, but also the owner of this church. Adopting a child infected with collapse disease was also her decision. At first, Li couldn't figure it out, but she was too lazy to dwell on it further. After all, he was just a small worker. As a staff member of the second church, Li has a lot of work to be responsible for, as most of the church's economy comes from him. Without him working outside, how could Aponia adopt so many children? Before he arrived at this church, Aponia had not yet started to provide relief for the children, and daily necessities were barely enough with the help of compassionate people and a small number of believers. Li came here shortly after the third collapse, as if he had been struck by a lightning bolt and fell to the ground in a daze, before being picked up by Aponia. Strangely, when they first met, Aponia had no intention of adopting a child, and at that time she was just a seemingly nagging little girl. Kelly was still tough enough to stay, and as for the reason, it was more difficult for him to understand than not knowing. I can't see your fate. This is the original words of Aponia, and Li still remembers the surprised and incredible look in Aponia's eyes when he said these words. To be honest, at that time, Li really thought she had encountered mental illness, even though Aponia was just a cute little beauty. Until now, although it has been confirmed that Aponia has no mental issues, Li sometimes still finds it difficult to understand the individual words spoken from her mouth. Perhaps it's a fool who finds it difficult to understand the brain circuits of smart people. Li's face was in tears. He really can't write questions about reading comprehension in a moment of confusion. Li had already arrived at the destination of his trip. Forest. And it is a forest that has been officially designated as a heavily infected area. Chapter 2. Dead Teammate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Collapse. This is a natural phenomenon that occurred before glass became conscious. Like disasters such as volcanoes and earthquakes, each occurrence of landslides is accompanied by a large number of casualties and property losses. However, compared to other natural disasters, landslides have greater randomness and greater harm. The manifestation of collapse can be a sudden explosion of common elements such as wind, ice, and lightning. While it may seem no different from other natural disasters, it is puzzling that the occurrence of collapse often generates a strange energy. This energy will affect the vast majority of organisms and cause them to mutate after certain conditions are met. The animal's body will become huge and will grow gray-white crustacean-like hard objects throughout its body. Humans, on the other hand, will turn gray and lose their rationality, becoming zombie creatures that were previously only visible on television. Collapse Beast and Death Warrior, this is the term given to animals and humans who are infected with this energy. And this energy is called collapse energy, which exists in the area where collapse has occurred and generates a dead zone in this area that is difficult for ordinary people to reach. The forest where Li is currently located is one of the areas. However, while collapse can be fatal to ordinary people, it poses no threat to individuals with specific constitutions. Coincidentally, Li belongs to this type of person. This is also why Li dared to enter this forest without any protection. As for why he came here, alright, my little ones, where are you? In this dangerous forest, Li spoke recklessly, but his body honestly hid among the trees, slowly moving towards the depths of the forest with a very low voice, ensuring that no more than one collapsing beast or warrior rushed towards him at the same time. Li is extremely experienced in shuttling back and forth between trees, and every time she moves, she crawls on all fours, completely hiding herself in the dense thicket. Her movements are careful, like a cat with a wrong berth. Every distance traveled, Lee would sneakily poke her head out of the grass and scan the surrounding area at an extremely fast speed, as if searching for something. Got it. Lucky this time, Lee soon discovered the target of this trip in the open space ahead. With two small saplings pinned to her head, as if this could completely integrate her with the environment, Lee looked at a cavalry-shaped shattered beast not far from her with the gaze of examining the goods. Whether or not there is meat to eat today depends on this big guy. Of course, Lee naturally wouldn't go crazy and bring this thing back to eat. After being infected, the entire body of the wild beast has been siliconized, with no meat at all. Not to mention, the body of the collapsing beast contains even more abundant collapsing energy. Taking a bite will definitely lead to death on the spot. However, the collapsing beast is of no use to Lee, but others may not be. There are still nouveau riche in this world who are willing to purchase this thing at a high price. No, it cannot be said that they are all nouveau riche, at least the people who cooperate with them are more like official personnel than nouveau riche. A few months after Lee arrived at the church, he reached an agreement with members of an organization. Lee was responsible for hunting the collapsing beast, and they were responsible for giving money and taking what they needed. Lee himself doesn't know why he received such a job. He does have the ability to hunt and destroy beasts, but in the general perception of most people, these tasks are usually assigned to a team. However, those people are willing to entrust this job to him alone, indicating that they have a great trust in their abilities. Lee doesn't have that much confidence in herself. Do you always feel something's wrong? After thinking about walking for a while, Lee accidentally stepped on a small branch under his feet and made a noise. Click. Roar. Just because I gave you one more glance in the crowd, one person and one beast looked at each other for a long time, and finally, with a blush, they moved their gaze away and ended this affectionate gaze. Are we the male and female protagonists in a romantic novel? Lee shook her head vigorously, driving the strange sense of immersion out of her mind. Sorry to bother you. Lee suddenly bowed, then turned around and ran before he could react. He is not foolish enough to confront a collapsing beast head on. Although it is not impossible for him, Lee still tries to avoid getting injured as much as possible, otherwise every time he goes back with scars, Aponia will have to nag again. Lily ran wildly while listening to the furious roar of the shattered beast coming from behind, sighing helplessly. These days are really not easy. I don't know how many times I avoided the claws of the collapsing beast and explored my backyard, but finally I managed to hold on until the arrival of the savior. Not far from him was a black business car parked, and through the open window, one could see a man sitting in the driver's seat holding a cigarette butt and puffing in the clouds, very leisurely. However, upon seeing the giant collapse beast following behind Lee, the man instantly became stunned, unaware that the cigarette butt in his hand had fallen to the ground. Why is this always the case every time I pick you up? The man roared at the young man like a breakdown. It seemed that Lee had already led the monster to his teammates many times. But at least he is a professional, and after being tricked many times, he has already gained strange experiences. After complaining, the man skillfully pulled out a rocket launcher from the passenger seat and fired it in the direction of Lee. Oh. Are you trying to murder a colleague? Looking at the oncoming shell, Lee let out a strange cry and then suddenly exerted force, throwing out several tens of meters ahead. This explosive force was not like that of a human. Roar. The shattered beast was still roaring incessantly, but unfortunately, the shell was also sent into its mouth at the moment it opened its mouth, exploding instantly. Isn't this much more delicious than humans? In the distance, Lee, who had escaped from danger, let out a sincere sigh when he saw the appearance of indigestion in the collapsed beast, although it sounded more like mockery. Roar. With the last roar before his death, the shattered beast, which had been washed away by the cannonball, reluctantly collapsed to the ground. One forelimb was raised above his head, looking as if he had died without closing his eyes. Walking leisurely forward, Lee leisurely wrote the words, "The murderer is," on the ground, pointed to by the front limbs of the shattered beast, which looked quite comical. After patting the dust on her body, Lee turned her head to look at her so-called colleague, showing a sunny boy-like smile, and even gestured to the front with one hand. "Today's performance is still so perfect, ghost, oh." The man, on the other hand, looked extremely angry and eager to thrust his rocket launcher into Lee's mouth. Why does this guy act like he's doing it all for himself, even though he helped him finish it himself? If it weren't for luck this time, the shell would have been directly shot into the monster's mouth, otherwise there might have been a battle that would have left him with missing arms and legs. Why would this guy die like this when it's clearly a job that requires human life? And lure the monster to his teammates, hoping to gather a double ticket in the underworld. I really admire it. How could I become a partner with this bastard? Chapter 3. Dear Mebius. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Don't show such an expression. Lee naturally noticed the man's inner displeasure, and in order not to lose his rare partner, although he was forcibly appointed by his superiors, Lee actively admitted his mistake. "I'm sorry, was it me this time? Next time, dare you." "And why is your sentence a question?" The man roused that he was tired, and the whole person seemed to become gray, and he lost his expectation for the future. "You guy, why hasn't Dr. Mebius killed you on the operating table yet? This way, I can change partners in time, otherwise I feel like I won't be able to make it to retirement age." "Don't be so ruthless. Look at what you're saying, even I feel heartbroken." Leto playfully covered her heart, as if she had really been hurt, revealing an expression of helplessness. "To die, without mercy. Okay. At least the task has been completed. With such a large disintegrating beast, it should be enough for the doctor to study for a while." Lee instantly regained her original state, caressing the skin of the shattered beast's corpse with her hands, but a sympathetic expression appeared on her face. "You're really not afraid of being infected, you guy?" The man watched silently as Lee came into close contact with the broken substance without any protection. "It's indeed a monster, no wonder the doctor wants to drag you onto the operating table. I would rather you could call it scientific dedication. Lee shrugged casually. Yes. So, a noble person who has devoted himself to science, could you please get on the car as soon as possible? I will send you away, and I will go back to catch up on sleep." After calling for someone to transport the body, the man angrily urged Lee, saying that he didn't want to stay in this dangerous place for too long. "Here we go. Get out of the co-pilot's seat. Don't try to touch the car, little brat without a driver's license. Humming a tune and driving the car." The two have already driven their cars to their destination. A giant facility that looks very official. Looking at the black helicopters flying around in the sky, Lee's face showed an expression of envy. He also wanted to try the taste of flying a plane, but unfortunately, even his car was prohibited from touching, let alone the helicopter. I still remember the last time I handed in a task, Lee secretly touched a jeep and wanted to take the opportunity to go for a ride and have a good time, but ended up rampaging around the base and almost being shot into a sieve by the guards. If it weren't for Dr. Mebius saving him, Aponia and the others wouldn't have seen themselves bouncing around. After that, Lee was strictly prohibited from touching the driver's seat of any transportation vehicle, which can be considered as a painless punishment. At this moment, Lee's eyes blinked as he looked at the man holding the steering wheel in the driver's seat. But even men and birds don't like their riding colleagues. They think of themselves as foolish and lacking guys, but they just throw him at the gate and kick the gas pedal and leave. Cough cough. Waving her hand to sweep away the car exhaust sprayed on her face, Lee angrily pointed her middle finger towards the direction the man was leaving, and was then rushed into the base under the urging of the guards. Under the guidance of the guards, Lee found her employer in an office, the perverted doctor who had always wanted to put herself on the operating table. Dr. Mebius is also considered a beautiful woman with long green hair in the eyes of uninformed people, and her figure is also good. She is a standard type of beauty. Even if she had some skills in seducing men, she wouldn't have become a notorious doctor who stays up late every day. At least for Lee, he wouldn't do such a job that he couldn't sleep well, even if he killed him. Look at the doctor's dark circles under his eyes, tsk, he always feels like he can't live for a few years. Lee took advantage of the moment when the doctor's back was facing her and she hadn't turned around yet, and she judged herself, even silently cursing her premature death. Who makes her plot against her body every day? Yo, isn't my cute little mouse secretly saying bad things about me from behind again? At this moment, Mebius turned his office chair around and looked at himself with a pair of snake-like pupils, as if trying to see through his heart. As an experimental subject, if you don't please your master well, won't you be afraid of suffering more on the operating table? How could that be, my dear Miss Mebius? Lee's face showed a fake smile that could no longer be fake. She squinted her eyes and smirked as she denied Mebius's ill intentions towards her, just like a cunning fox. As your #1 supporter, everything you do will receive strong support from me. Even though you are so perfect, I will never allow anyone to slander your image. Mebius squinted his eyes slightly. False, yes, everything you say is truth, everything you say is right, you. TSK, forget it, come here, take off your clothes, let me take a look at your body. Mebius always felt that her rationality would be completely evaporated in the near future, so she decisively gave up arguing with Lee and decided to go straight to business. Her leisure time was not much, and if it weren't for waiting for this bastard, she wouldn't have left her laboratory at this time. May, what do you want? Lee has 2 hands to protect her chest and looks like a young man from a good family. Can you be calm? Come over quickly and take off my upper body clothes. Don't. Mebius couldn't help but have several black lines on his forehead, and he took out a small pistol from one drawer and fired 3 shots in a row. This guy really thinks her time can be wasted casually. In the end, Lee arrived in front of Mebius with ease, naked in her upper body for this perverted doctor to appreciate. Alas, I haven't seen you for just 1 day. Why is the doctor's temper so hot? If I could have said more than a dozen words yesterday, is it menopause? Mebius didn't know or was too lazy to pay attention to Lee's wild thoughts. He only dutifully inspected Lee's upper body and even used his cold little hand to almost completely touch it, causing Lee to get goosebumps all over, which made him put on his clothes. Wrinkled his brow and looked at Lee for a while. Mebius seemed to be pondering something, while his small hand kept tapping on his desk. The troubled little figure made Lee feel a false sense of heartache for a moment, but his acting skills were all pushed back by Mebius using a small pistol to get into his mouth. Hi, my dear Miss Mebius, don't show this expression every time you check, there will be more wrinkles. Staring blankly at Mebius and pondering for a long time, Lee couldn't help but say that for him, a strange and restless person, this quiet atmosphere was a torment for him. Chapter 4. The Cute and Charming Fairy Miss. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 5. Terrifying Struggle. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 6. Danger. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 7. Cute Girl Heart. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Strange Dreams. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 9. The Girl Named Sakura. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 10. Sister Aponia. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text.